Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 Kigali Startup Exhibition. My name is Patrick Chusa, and I will be your host for the day. We are currently live from the rooftop of the Westerville Startup House, Kigali. What you have behind me is a beautiful 360-degree view of the city. Last year's exhibition brought together more than 400 participants. This year, we are putting it live for even an international audience and everybody from the comfort of their home following COVID-19 measures. Join us online. We will be running the conversation with the hashtag KGL Startup 2020. Without further ado, welcome to the exhibition. Welcome back, everyone, and to kick off the exhibition, we would like to welcome Sangwa Rwabuhihi, who is the Country Director of Westerville Startup House Kigali. Welcome, Sangwa.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having us. So, the Westerville Startup House initiated the Kigali Startup Exhibition, I would say last year. Can you take us back to that time, and what were the reasons you looked at the ecosystem and said, let's actually showcase and give a platform to startups in Kigali?
Yeah, well, the ecosystem itself of Kigali has evolved a lot in the last 2 years.
Yes.
We're seeing an increasing number of startups raising capital, growing, expanding on the continent.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to show what was happening in the city,
Yes.
but also talk about the work that the different hubs and ecosystem partners are doing.
Mm-hmm.
We've been integrating our programs, we've been building bridges,
Mm-hmm.
and today is an occasion to showcase that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So last year it was a physical space, 400 participants. Now we are really doing it virtual, innovating in that sense. What would you say the drive to keep it going and to keep that momentum moving despite the restrictions of COVID-19?
Well, COVID has definitely impacted on our lives.
Yes.
Our lives as entrepreneurs, our lives as partners in this ecosystem, but a lot has been happening this year.
Yes.
And we wanted to show that despite all the challenges that we keep going,
Mm-hmm.
and so we've taken some measures. Eventually, the event is a virtual event. We've made sure that everybody who is speaking today is also isolated, and all the safety measures are respected. But we wanted this to happen.
Yes. Yeah. And I would say with regards to COVID-19, necessity is the mother of all invention. So I would say there are many startups that are also coming up during this time of crisis, trying to respond to pandemic-related challenges. What would you say, in a broader sense, as really focusing on the startups, what have been the challenges with regards to COVID-19 for the startups in your programs or the ones that you see in the ecosystem?
Well, I would say there are challenges associated to supply chains
Mm-hmm.
that have been disrupted all over the world, importing and exporting goods from Rwanda.
Mm-hmm.
There are also challenges in terms of traveling, of people between different provinces in Rwanda.
Mm-hmm.
We've had startups here that have operations in places like Musanze, places
Yes.
like Butare, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And so they've had to adapt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely issues related to the purchasing power of customers
Yes.
that was impacted in the last few months.
Okay.
We're seeing some recovery, but I think this is going to take some time.
Mm.
So challenging times, definitely.
Yeah.
But there are some signs of recovery, and we hope it will not be too long.
Yeah. Likewise.
Yeah.
And going now into the Westerville Startup House, what are the interventions that are currently running? Yes, the interventions you're currently running, and what are they addressing at the moment?
So we have initiated an entrepreneurship program about 1.5 years ago.
Yes.
And that is supporting early stage startups that have a number of products or services that do have an impact in the community. That is a program that we've needed to adapt a little bit because of the current situation. Try to help them to make a better risk assessment of what they're doing. Try to help them also in terms of legal, financial advice.
Yes.
A lot of them had to renegotiate their contracts, renegotiate things like rent, and so on and so forth. So, and also having discussions around diversification of their portfolio. A lot of them were not able to do what they've been doing in the past. So a lot of adapting also for us.
Okay.
But yeah, so far so good. I believe the next cohort is also going to experience some of these new approaches that we've introduced, and we'll see what it takes us.
Oh, okay. And mentioning the next cohort, how do they join your programs? How can they join? What is your offering, if you can pitch the Westerville startup programs?
So what they get is a 9-month program, first of all, where they are immersed in a larger community of entrepreneurs, so they're not isolated. And they get access to a number of workshops, advisory services, different types of events.
Yes.
And so we're looking for startups that are at least 1 year, that have been in 1 year in operations, that have an existing product or service, possibly some revenue, and that have ideas that are, or products that are scalable.
Yes.
So there is an online form that we're going to be releasing very soon.
Okay.
The next cohort will be starting end of November. And we encourage any entrepreneur. They don't have to be based in Kigali. That's important. And that could be any sector. It's not just the tech sector. We've had people in agribusiness, in tourism, etc.
And I'm glad you mentioned scalability, because there has been we've heard that investment might be a challenge into startups that are trying to scale in Rwanda, in different cities, in different countries. What would you say is your approach to this specific challenge in terms of investment?
So what we're going to be introducing in this new cohort is specific tailor-made support in terms of identifying, first of all, what are the needs in terms of investment.
Okay.
Matchmaking them with potential investors, not necessarily in Kigali, but also in the region. And then supporting them in the entire process of actually obtaining that financing. So this is something that is new also for us, but we've identified that as an issue.
All right.
And we really want to start doing something about it.
Great. Thank you very much, Sangwa, for your time.
Thank you.
And without further ado, we're going to meet some of the program participants at the Westerville Startup House Kigali.
Your brand group is a marketing and public relations firm. We started the operations back in 2018, and our main focus is digital marketing and helping companies to have a strong online presence they are proud of. Back in the days, the ways of marketing were through like traditional ways like radios and newspapers, which were very expensive for businesses, especially like startups and small enterprises. And we are bringing the digital solutions to help companies to have like a clear marketing strategies that would enable them to reach a bigger audience at a cheaper cost and more affordable. So in that regard, we brought in like different services like social media management, search engine optimization, and website management. Having a vision of building like a strong PR firm in Rwanda, not only in Rwanda but also in Africa, which will have like a couple of like different marketing and communication professionals, so that we'll be able to serve different kinds of clients from small to medium and make sure that the whole ecosystem is covered with marketing professionals that will be able to provide the needs they are missing on the market.
My name is Haley Mundeva, and the name of my company is Thrive Hire, and it's a centralized career platform that's built for the global public health industry. So through our website, we provide career services, including CV and cover letter reviews, career coaching, and we also offer a job board. So like a lot of entrepreneurs, my business was not planned. It was pretty spontaneous. I have a background in global public health. So after I finished my Master's of Public Health degree, I began working for 4 years on different health research projects in Ethiopia, Malawi, and Tanzania. And I got about 3 years into that, and I started realizing how difficult it could be to build a career in public health. I was really lost in terms of what career pathways were out there, what organizations I could apply to and reach out to. And as a researcher, I did the only thing I knew how to do at the time, which was research. And I sat down and interviewed a little over 20 HR managers of different global public health organizations and also job seekers. And after assessing some of their insights, I realized that ultimately a business could potentially solve some of the challenges that people were talking about, and that was ultimately the catalyst for Thrive Hire. So through our centralized website, we're helping employers save time and money when it comes to finding qualified talent who actually have the skills and experiences that they're looking for. And through our website, we're also helping job seekers really feel more confident in their job application and save time finding the specific opportunities that they're wanting to get involved in. Moving forward, we hope to achieve a lot of things. We hope to really fine-tune our business model and also expand our services. So far, we've been mainly working with clients in North America, but we're expanding into different parts of sub-Saharan Africa, where a good majority of global health work is conducted. We're also planning to expand our clientele and to ultimately start working with universities as well.
My name is Sofia Lake, and I'm a founder of Aquasurf. Aquasurf, we are focusing for providing the improving the fish productivity. But what we offer to the fish farmer, we are giving the water monitoring device and also technical support and also the practice and the training. And also we are connected with the fish farmer and also the supplier with fish food and also a fish product. And also we are giving the fish farmer for the training. What apart from the devices that we are providing with the fish farmer, over the checking the water quality, we are checking the acidity, temperature, the soft oxygen, and also the data is lively, and also the fish farmer can check the data that they have. If there is the abnormal condition, the fish farmer can get the SMS notification through the phone. I'm growing in the fish farmer family, and when I was young with my mom, we went to fish, and also there's a fish that is floating, that are dying. When I was in academia, I tried to make a research, what does the fish affect? And it seems that when the water is contaminated, the fish can't survive and also they can't grow. And also I make a research and also breed the prototype for the device where they can check the water, the acidity, and also the oxygen, that the critical parameter that affected the fish to grow and also to survive. And also make the prototype for the device, and the data will be lively for the fish farmer. And also, according to the problem that they are facing, the 50% of fish production was lost because of those contaminated water from the water. And also, we bring it about the solution as Aquasurf. We are working with the fish farmer in the cooperatives, and also we are providing the device for water monitoring device, and also we are helping the one cooperative for technical support and maintaining the fish ponds, and also we are training the fish farmer for the cooperative.
My name is Lucky John. I'm co-founder at Turanji. So basically at Turanji what we do, we enable businesses and individuals to move their goods conveniently by helping them to easily get connected to nearby truck drivers. We started Turanji in order to solve the problem of inconveniencing how people move goods across Rwanda, because as Rwanda is growing its export market and trades, we saw that most of the business struggled to get a convenient transport of their goods. That's why we came up with the initiative to create an ecosystem of drivers that can help them to easily move their goods. Turanji, we envision to create a logistics infrastructure that people around Africa can use to move their goods in order to do more and more.
My name is Ines, and I work for Gravity Studios.
My name is Shabani. I'm the founder of Gravity Studio. Gravity Studio, we are a company that links businesses with top creatives to work on their project. The problem is that we found out that some of the creatives don't have enough information on where to find customers for their art. And then we also found out that businesses also don't know where to find top creatives to work on their project.
We want to become the people known as the one with the database that has a big collection of different types of creatives and be able to connect them to any type of businesses or companies that are looking to tell their stories with the help of the visual content that all our people create.
My name is Angelique Mdeni.
My name is David Kinsuzi.
So our company, we are recycling plastics. As we know, there are many plastics that end up in landfills, and we want to reduce those plastics that end up in landfills. So as a solution, we have created a construction material that is made out of plastic waste that usually used to end up in landfills. And as our solution, we want to also set collection centers where we'll get the plastics and where people will be able to bring their plastics, then we bring them to our production site to be recycled.
The reason why we created this product is, first of all, it's very eco-friendly because it's created out of plastic waste that otherwise would have ended up in the landfill, as she mentioned. And then they're also 3 times resistant as well compared to the normal paving blocks that are created out of cement. And then they're also resistant on the long run as well. I think the biggest motivation behind my green home is we have two motivations. So the first one is just seeing us dumping things on the landfill and that creating health hazards, but also as well environmental hazards. But then the other thing is Rwanda is really developing in terms of infrastructure. We're always building houses and buildings. So we wanted to pair those two opportunities and challenges to ensure that we're creating a product that's common for both of those opportunities and challenges. So that's how we developed the eco-friendly paper. So I think the biggest challenge right now we are solving in the ecosystem is that the plastic that otherwise would have ended up in the landfill and created health problems to people, communities living around the landfill, are being recycled and introduced into the society in a very harmless way. The other thing is the issue of people who don't have, like in the informal waste collection sector, where they don't have jobs. We're also creating the opportunity for them to be able to provide with us plastic waste, and then we give them money or other benefits in exchange as well. The future is very bright for us, as we like to say it. One of the things we want to achieve in the near future is being the first government partner in terms of recycling plastic waste and turning it into building materials. The other thing is we also hope to see zero plastic waste ending up in the landfill because we are recycling 100% of the plastic waste. And then in the long-term future is also expanding in other countries and reintroducing these products in those countries and ensuring that we are increasing our impact.
My name is Manzi Didier.
And the name Oizeye, I'm the CEO. So our company called Olado Business Group. So it's an e-commerce platform that operates here in Rwanda. What we do, we just bring together sellers and buyers under one portal so that they can do business together. So, but we also focus on promoting made in Rwanda product so that people locally they can afford them and access them easily, and also to bring them on international market. We pretty much have 2 motivations. So the first one was the experience we had in e-commerce industry, and the second one was that we were young Rwandans and we have been seeing that people are, and also the government is involving that much in technology and innovations. And so people will, this was the good opportunity for us to bring the new system on the market so that people can also be accessing product on the market easily by offering them a platform that will help them to access those products online, order them online, and also get them delivered at their place. So this will help these people, people who don't have time for shopping, for walking around, to get those products easily, but also helping those vendors around the city who don't have a way of marketing their products so that they can access to those people easily. But also, let alone we find out that here in Rwanda we have nice products that are made in Rwanda, but they didn't have access on the market. That's the problem we are solving. We are helping those producers to access to the market, to bring their product on the market. As now we are covering the whole territory of Rwanda, so we are now preparing to starting working with different producers, vendors around East African, so that we can have more content, more products, a variety of products for our client, but also trying to reach out to international market so that people like diasporas can be able to access those products made in Rwanda, and why not made in Africa products easily and get them delivered.
Hello, my name is Martin Basanianye. I'm an associate in a makerspace. So makerspace, it's a digital fabrication where we do more hands-on, like product. We welcome startup company that want to bring their idea into reality to work with us. So mainly, many people usually go to outside the country to get the products done, and then we are solving that. Also time saving, because it was taking so longer to get the product done. Also, we are boosting agriculture into electronic and more advanced. Yeah. So we started in Kigali, but we hope to go into other sectors to boost the agriculture. So yeah.
My name is Rindiro Bruce. I'm the co-founder of On-Time Services. Basically, what we do in On-Time Services, we digitalize private transport by offering technology that help the private institutions or the schools. We will give them a ride-sharing app where the student can get to see the schedule of the bus, and then they can connect themselves to the bus, and they get to see where the bus is, when is it coming. And also we give the service to the primary schools and secondary. We give parents the app where they get to know where the bus is coming, if the bus is nearby. So, and if your kid is on the bus, you get to know all the status and the data via our On-Time Services app. Been facing this with my family. So we I have a young sister, and we had to wait like an hour a day by waiting for a bus, because we really don't know the time the bus is coming, and we don't have the direct information or a direct contact with the school bus driver. And yeah, that's why I came up with the service, because I was doing engineering and business courses. Yeah, this is going to help the ecosystem, especially in private transport. So we're going to help the private buses, private transport to be connected, and we're going to give like peace of mind to the parents, where we're going to save them a lot of time by not waiting for the bus, and also we're going to have to help the bus operators and bus companies, where they're going to digitalize their services, and they're going to get more profits by having this organized freight management, and this is going to boost their revenues. Currently, we're going to achieve first to get the private buses in Rwanda connected, and we're also going to look for more markets, by studying in Rwanda.
My name is Minmi from Mbongo, and my company it's a travel and tour app that allows users to book and pay for affordable places to stay across Africa, currently in Rwanda and Cameroon, and pay with their mobile money wallet. So the motivation came from a lot of friends who were traveling to Rwanda, and they offered to look for places to stay, and I offered to rent out my room to them. But after this, it became recurring, and I realized that there is a need in the market that needs to be addressed. So we decided to expand, to build a whole company on this idea. So what Bongal is solving in the travel tourism industry, basically, it's payment. So there is a payment gap that is being left by the big companies that operate from the Western world, that just extend to Africa without an African context. So with the mobile wallet payment, which is something that has really penetrated in Africa, we make it available for local companies local individuals who are traveling within the continent to book places and pay with their mobile money wallet. And in addition to that, Bongalo also allows many more hosts to list on their platform, because it allows them to receive their payouts on mobile money accounts once they receive bookings from travelers across the continent. So this is an opportunity, and then we are basically solving a payment gap in the travel industry. We hope to be present in the entire 54 African countries, and also be able to attain a certain level of growth, and also provide more jobs to Africans through our initiative, which will enable them to work with us directly or indirectly, like creating more employment opportunities basically.
My My name is Shumbusho Musa. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rwanda Editory. So Rwanda Editory is an education directory, basically helping to profile all education institutions here in Rwanda through giving them online visibility and presence, so that parents and students can access information for these education institutions, and also can get opportunities available for students, including internships, including basically I built this idea from the challenges I faced due to the fact that I didn't grow up from Rwanda. So when I came to Rwanda to join university, I faced a lot of challenges to find which university I can get fitting my needs. So this is a really big challenge I face. So I said that at least I can do something to solve this challenge. I think a lot of people are getting even now. Solution is that we are helping all education institutions in Rwanda to get online visibility and presence, and also we are helping parents and students access information to these education institutions instead of leaving their homes running to look for those information. They can find them on the internet. And also this is a platform to help education institutions to advertise from, to find the target students they are looking for, because our platform is getting a lot of traffic, at least getting 6,000 visitors per month. We hope to cover all education institutions here in Rwanda, giving them online visibility and presence. And also we want, after covering Rwanda, then we want to also cover other education institutions in the East African region.
Welcome back. We are now joined by the Senior Program Manager at Siegel Family Foundation, Liana. Liana, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So, the Siegel Family Foundation has been in Kigali for quite a while now. Could you tell us a little bit more about your story in Rwanda and your interventions in the ecosystem?
Sure. So, as you said, Siegel Family Foundation has been in Rwanda for quite a while. In fact, it's the first country in Sub-Saharan Africa we started investing in 2007. Our founder, Barry Siegel, well, when he came, I guess he fell in love with a country like everyone does. But it was more about the opportunities that we're seeing and unlocking the potential that we were seeing in young people here and other innovators in different sectors. So of course, from Rwanda we grew to be funding now and investing in over 200 organizations and social enterprises in 20 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa. And as we were talking about the ecosystem, in Rwanda we run the Social Impact Incubator, which is an innovation platform that nurtures leadership and innovation. We do support young entrepreneurs and other innovators in different sectors: education, healthcare, agriculture, circular economy, who are all passionate and strive to create value, whether it's through business models or other models that help them to change the narrative and create more impact where they see it's needed.
Exactly.
Yeah,
great. Your organization is known among the few who actually support financially NGOs and social enterprises, not necessarily for-profit startups as they're known in the industry. What would you say is similarities and in terms of challenges and opportunities with those two models, in terms of pure NGOs going through social enterprise and being a for-profit startup?
So yeah, you will be surprised because challenges and similarities and opportunities are actually similar in both spaces, whether it's NGOs or resources in Africa specifically. So while we are headquartered in New Jersey, the entire investment happens on the continent in Africa. Why? Because we see and an equal access to resources and capacity support, yet the talent is there.
Yes.
But as a philanthropy foundation, we see the need to close that gap and avail different types of resources, especially financial, as you were saying. For NGOs, I think it's very common to see a lot of players in this NGO space and funders, but I think but what I'm certain that what makes us particular is that we look at the local visionaries who are really thriving to make the change that they want to see, but also who wouldn't be, who are not necessarily trusted or who are seen as risky by most funders. And well, we go there, we invest in them, invest in the socioeconomic environment they live in, and whether they are NGOs or social enterprises, we definitely do both the technical support and the financial support, and connect them to a wide community of other funders and other peers across the continent that they need and support them in their growth journey. But specifically for the social enterprise space or just the entrepreneurship ecosystem, is we see a lot of players being more comfortable with providing, the capacity support, because these are the gaps that we see on the continent. But that is not enough to actually see businesses taking off, to actually see businesses thriving and growing past 5 years, 10 years. And part of that observation was to actually, craft and design with entrepreneurs the right support and the right response to that. And so we provide blended funding that is appropriate to each, whether they are NGOs or social enterprises, for them to be able to see their dreams and their work actually yield more fruits.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So coming back now to the social impact incubator you mentioned, and I know this is one very recent program that started last year. Yes. We also heard you've entered into a partnership with the Business Professionals Network that are directly supporting these entrepreneurs in the incubator. Can you tell us a little bit more about that partnership?
Sure, and I think before I talk about the partnership, I would want to talk about maybe how we do approach, this whole supporting entrepreneurs in Rwanda, in Africa. But we cannot talk about entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship without looking at the ecosystem. And so we look at the value creation for entrepreneurs from an ecosystem lens.
Nice.
And while we have a lot of expertise in this area, we also look at, who else, if not us, can be providing, other support, like the Business Professional Network. As you said, we also collaborated with the Westerville house here.
Yes.
It's always looking at who can be adding more value to the journey of these entrepreneurs, to really create collaborative efforts for them to be able to grow and create more impact.
All right.
So this is where we know is going to create more chances for, but not just but opportunities for those entrepreneurs to go far. So we are always in the outlook of any other player we can work with to provide the services that we might not be able to as a foundation, but that are existing, so that we don't reinvent the wheel, and so that they can maximize from those opportunities that we see around. So this is how we also entered in the partnership with the BPN here in Rwanda.
Thank you very much, Liana, for your time.
Thank you.
We will now be joining the entrepreneurs and the innovators who are part of the Social Impact Incubator at BPN. Thank you.
Amazina yanjye nitwa Jean-Claude Ntamuhanga. Kampani yacu yitwa Rwanda Isolation Limited, ikora ibijyanye n'ifumbire y'imborera. Twatangiye Rwanda Isolation kubera impamvu zigera kuri 3. Hari 2015 twabonaga imyanda isandara ahantu hose. Turavuga tse iyi myanda ntitwayibyaza umusaruro. Iyo ari impamvu ya mbere. Ikindi kintu cyatumye tuyitangira hariho kubera gukoresha cyane ibijyanye na chemical n'ifumbire y'imvaruganda, ubutaka bwacu bwatangiye kwangirika. Ubwo tuyitangira kubera impamvu yuko twabonaga ubutaka bwacu buri kwangirika. Indi mpamvu ya gatatu, ifumbire yari hari icyo gihe yari ihenze. Kubera ifumbire ihenze rero twahisemo gukora uburyo bwose twakora kugira ngo dutange ifumbire nziza dukoresheje izo microbe muri kubona hano, kandi ifumbire nziza kandi iri ku giciro gito. Uyu munsi ikibazo turi gukemura ikibazo cy'imyanda twaragikemuye, kuko imyanda aho kugira ngo ijugunywe ibe yateza ibindi bibazo mu baturage, twe turayifata, twamara kuyifata tukayikoramo ifumbire y'imborera dukoresheje effective microorganism muri kubona hano, kuko nizo dukoresha, ifumbire yacu ikaba iri nziza. Ikindi kibazo cya kabiri dukemura, ubutaka bwari bwaragundutse butakibasha kwera, dukora icyo bita soil restoration. Icyo gihe no kuvuga ngo ubutaka turi kongera nutrient kubera ifumbire yacu, ubutaka bukarushaho kwera. Turifuza ko buri munyarwanda wese ahari mu gihugu ndetse n'abaturanyi bacu bihugu duturanye, ko mu minsi iri imbere yabasha kubona ifumbire dukora y'imborera ku giciro gito, akabasha kuyigura kandi agahinga, umusaruro ukabasha kwiyongera.
My name is Amina Umuhoza, and I'm representing Saya Company Limited. It's a social enterprise company that aims to empower young Rwandan women mentally, socially, and economically so as to fight teenage pregnancies and menstrual stigma. 4 per 100 pregnancies are from teenagers, so this highlights the high rates of teenage pregnancies, and even this problem has negative effects to young women towards achieving their full potential. So there was a need to come up with youth-friendly solutions that address this particular question. We are dealing with the root causes of teenage pregnancies, such as inadequate sexual reproductive health information, poverty, and peer pressure. For now, we are providing different services where we give out e-counseling, sexual reproductive health through stories, and also organize different community outreaches program, and we sell products that are manufactured by young women. So all of these approaches that we are using, we look forward to see a decrease in rates of teenage pregnancies, but also looking forward to rise up a generation of young women who are empowered, even to empower their fellows to achieve their full potential.
My name is Ildefonse Mungwara Karama. I'm here representing Creativity Lab. Creativity Lab is an education technology company offering innovative teaching and equipment to children of 7 to 13 years old to build their skills in robotics, engineering, and creative coding. We find that in this generation, technology is dominating and job creation. We said it's a good idea to start with those young children, to introduce them to technology, to have a future innovator and problem solver in the future. In our education, especially in primary schools, there is a lack of tools and hands-on experiment in the classroom. And we said we can also support the existing curriculum of the government by producing those materials and also teach those young children to be innovative and go in deep of what they learn in theory. What we want to achieve is to have professional innovators and problem solvers in the future. Those young children also will be the key of the development.
Welcome back. We are now joined by the CEO of the Rwanda ICT Chamber, Alex Ntare. Alex, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Could you tell us the kind of work that you've been doing at the ICT Chamber and also K-Lab, since it's very attached, that has impacted the IT industry since the creation of the organization?
So we started back in 2011, actually during consultations on what is famously known as Nikki plans, or the Nikki 3 version. And at that point, government was looking to really leverage the infrastructure that had been laid, and to move away now from infrastructure to actually using the infrastructure through developing services and other things that run on that infrastructure. That is now looks like a long time ago, and it is quite. It's been a journey. A few things that went into it that we've been doing. One was bringing Richter and the domain, the country, CCTLD,
Yes.
which was done by colleagues in Richter, and that also galvanized efforts and began bringing together the industry players, thinking together, working together, and that's when actually the ICT Chamber in a way was born, and as conversations globally were going on about entrepreneurship and the new era of entrepreneurship in technology, thoughts and plans began coming up, incubators on the continent, and KLab was born.
Yeah.
So to date, what we have seen is that what used to be the tiny companies, the startups, the one person, one individual at university idea, and now some of the companies that are running key sectors in the country.
Exactly.
And that's really the catalytic effect that we have seen. The chamber and KLab as a knowledge lab has been playing.
Exactly. So thank you. Looking at the evolution of those startups that you were talking about, since we're really focusing on those innovators, those young innovators who kind of went through the KLab Knowledge Hub and have really used that infrastructure. We now have fiber laid out all across the country. What would you say were the challenges that they've met along the way, and what challenges are still there that need to be addressed?
The biggest challenges, I know people don't want to admit it, is access to finance and access to funding.
Yes.
And one can claim that funding is not an answer to everything, but to a degree, capital is a weapon. If you don't have it, whoever has it has a leg up against whoever doesn't have it.
Exactly.
And that was the challenge then. It's still a challenge today. But a lot of initiatives have been set up. Case in point where we are, the startup houses that have been born, the co-working spaces that have been born, all that has played a role in lessening the burden and reducing the weight that a startup in 2011, 2010 had to do. You had to rent your own space, you had to pay your own internet, you had to cover all these costs, and then you would also have to cover your rent at home. So that's that's the pain that they had to go through. So to a degree, that has come, that cost or barrier to entry has gone down.
Yes.
And now with a laptop and access, there's so many Wi-Fi hotspots, people can connect and start their business and connect onto Amazon Web Services or DigitalOcean, and off they run.
Yes.
So that's I think that's the challenge. Those are some of the challenges that have come down.
All right.
But for those that have certain types of maybe hardware and other kind of innovations that are not internet-based, that are not software only, I still find it also a challenge to get into, to get to market.
Exactly. So you would say the challenge is still there in terms of raising the right kind of investments for startups?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They are still there. They're still there. They still, and it's two-sided. It's one on the side of the investors, but also on the capital providers. Maybe not investors necessarily, but capital providers. But on the other side, financial literacy or capital literacy on the side of startups.
Okay.
That's still a problem if you look at it. Even with the startups that are on the market, every now and then you realize what type of funding does this, at this stage, does this company need?
Yes.
Okay. Do they need to be giving away equity, or do they need debt? Do they need convertible notes? So all that lingo is still a maze to navigate.
Exactly. Thank you. So you did mention many ecosystem actors that are coming into into the Kigali market, into the Rwandan market in general. How would you advise an aspiring innovator, an aspiring entrepreneur or co-founders who are starting something to leverage this ecosystem? What would be the best way to navigate the ecosystem right now?
So one is to identify what you need, where you at, because not every hub is right for you for the stage you're at. Okay, you could be maybe better off just sitting in Fab Lab and just do your small hardware and then get to a prototype, and then you can apply into Siegel Family Foundation's accelerator program, or you go to BNP or come to Westerville. So you need to understand where am I in the journey, and understanding that entrepreneurship journey or product development journey is important, because at the beginning what you need most is not the funding, but it's these non-capital facilitation that actually you can leverage, that most of which I know are free. So you have free access to Fab Lab and K-Lab. We even give you materials to use if you come to Fab Lab. The same thing you have in Westerville. You have a makerspace in here. You have I think I've seen Tourism Inc. For innovators that are in tourism.
Yes.
They get a grant for setting up for working on their prototypes. So there is quite a lot, but you need to understand where am I in the journey. Okay, so not to prematurely rush, or not to actually leave money on the table.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thank you very much.
I think we are very ready to go meet entrepreneurs at K-Lab.
I'm Christian Kuzge. I'm CTO at Academic Bridge. Academic Bridge will help schools to correct, process, and analyze information. And we also help schools and parents to stay connected. So we started Academic Bridge based on the challenges we have seen the schools maybe in primary and the secondary school went to, and could find teachers they are using more time to correct and process data, such as like student results and attendance, a library, and we could see they are spending more time, and they couldn't focus on the main learning activities. So we just wanted to help those teachers and other school staff to do their work more efficiently by providing a platform that can make their work more easier. So we are hoping to work with more schools. Now we are working with schools in Rwanda and schools in Uganda and Burundi. So we are trying to use the lesson we learned from all those clients, so we can scale on many schools in different countries, so we can bring what we have learned from those schools to many schools, and also keep innovating, providing different products based on the ongoing challenges. Recently with COVID, we have created the platform that helps schools to provide the learning, e-learning. So we keep working with schools, and we keep innovating. So we are hoping for more better products and more schools coming on board.
My name is Shadrach Munyeshaka. I'm the CEO and founder of Nyerekatech. Nyerekatech provides electronic component and devices with robust courses like IoT, embedded system, and robotics to technical students, technical schools, and technical companies, and professional technician. And we help schools to get electronic component and devices to improve the quality of education. The problem we are solving is to help technical students or professional technicians to get easily and affordable electronic component and devices are going to use to make other electronic devices. I want to make Nyerekatech to be like the heart of technology across Africa that can help technical students or professional technicians to get those electronic components easily and affordable, either internal market or external market.
Sure. My name is Edward, and I manage U Plus Mutual Partners. It's a digital financial platform that enables groups to pool money for any activity or an event in their life. So what motivated me was we understood that there was some inefficiencies in the way people pool their money together in terms of security and how people were able to keep track of how funds were being used and where funds were. So with creating this digital platform, we were able to create a solution that solved those problems and gave the power to the users in terms of how to use their money and how to see how their money is being moved around. So what we hope to attain in the future is that we want to be able to say that people are able to use U Plus as a way to pull funds together, finance an event in their life, or finance the purchase of an asset or a service. Either you can do it as a group or you can do it as an individual by creating an account on U Plus Mutual Partners. And you can definitely find it on the Play Store, and we'll be pushing an update so that we can actually launch it as well on the iOS. But for right now, users who have Android phones can start using U Plus and experience the financial journey and the efficiency that we have created within the app.
Thank you. I'm Rugamba Christian. I'm the managing director of Tech Avenue 137. It's a local consulting company in IT. So we do mostly a customer-based solution that serve their purpose. Like when we are approached by the client, we make sure that we deliver a good software that they need. Well, what motivated us to start is that we were seeing around after finishing our university and find that there is a gap in providing good solutions, softwares on the market. So that's why we started our services. Yeah, well, the problem we are solving in the ecosystem is the reliability of the client to the IT companies that can serve what they need. Like, for example, we have from USID to UGH that the system they need now, they're using it and they're happy. So we think that we also continue to grow our base of the clients. We are mostly serving locally clients, but we need also to go abroad, maybe in West Africa and also in Africa in general.
My name is Mufti Nkurunziza, CEO and founder of Case Show. We're a visual design company specializing in the areas of, we do films, VR, and other forms of communication. It was a need, a desire of what I saw in other developed markets, and I wanted it for our market too. There's a couple of problems we're solving, but also there are other things that are not necessarily problems, but more of needs we are serving. So since we are into content creation, so we solve many problems by using our content, be in education or communication. Secondly, in other areas of entertainment, we serve those needs for our communities. The entire industry developed that was non-existent in our area here in Rwanda and Africa in general.
My name is Yvonne Inaomono. I'm the managing director of Moira Limited, a company that connects people to chefs who can cook for them anytime. We started this company after realizing that people need food. It's essential, but we meet different challenges when we want to eat healthy homemade food, and that's why what we really wanted to solve when we started this company. We're solving a problem of unemployment, but also helping people to save time and money. We want to be the change makers in the ecosystem, and we want also to create as many jobs as possible. Thank you very much.
One of our great partners in the 2020 Kigali Startup Exhibition is Entrepreneur Solutions Partners, or ESP for short. They have recently launched the Tourism Inc., which is an incubator supporting directly businesses in the tourism and hospitality sector with capacity building and grant making as well. We'll now go downstairs and meet them in their space.
My name is Patrick Karangwa from Kigali 360. I'm a virtual tour content creator. When I started developing this imagery, it was just a hobby. I enjoyed the ability 360 images offers, the ability to look around in all angles. Then I realized it was actually a very a good opportunity for businesses, especially in the tourism industry, to offer to their clients. Then I created a company called Kigali 360. Virtual tours, especially today's during this pandemic of COVID-19, are offering future clients the ability to navigate places without actually physically being there. So I hope to integrate the virtual tours into various industries such as education and healthcare systems, and I'm looking forward to be able to create 500 jobs in the coming years.
Company yanjye yitwa Ikaze Luggage Storage. Ibyo ikora tubikira abantu ibikapu bari ku rugendo mu gihe gitoya. Ikintu cyanteye gukora iyi business hari muri 2018 ubwo nari ndi ku rugendo n'umuvandimwe wanjye, dufite ibikapu byinshi dushaka ahantu ho kubisiga tugiye gusura ku rwibutso rwo ku Gisozi. Biratugora cyane kugendana n'ibikapu kubera ko twari dufite amafaranga makeya yo gutega. Mu gihe tugezeyo mu bijyanye no kwibuka biza kudutera ikibazo, dushaka no guta imizigo yacu kubera ko twari tunaniwe. Nshakisha ahantu baba bakora ibyo bintu mu Rwanda ndahabura, ariko mbona hanze ko ari ikintu bakora cyane kandi gifasha abagenzi. Ikibazo turi gukemura ni ukugabanya stress abagenzi bahura nazo bagenda, zo kuba bagenda babyigana n'imizigo yabo, ndetse no kugabanya energy bakoresha ndetse n'umwanya n'amafaranga batakaza. No gufasha abantu gukoresha amafaranga makeya kandi bakagenda neza mu rugendo rwabo muri akazi. Icyo twizera kuzageraho nuko twifuza kuzagira storage nini ifite ibikoresho byose kandi ikora online, iri international, ku buryo abantu baza mu Rwanda batabasha kwinubira ku rugenda cyangwa se kumva ko bihenze kugenda mu Rwanda.
Sandrine Musayimana, kampani yitwa Sandrine Baker, tukaba dukora amakeke, tugakora imigati, tugakora cookies n'ibindi byose bikozwe mu ifarini. Ikintu cyanteye gutangira business yanjye cyane nuko ngewe nkunda food industry, cyane baking. Ikindi kandi nuko mfite inshuti n'abavandimwe banjye bakunda amakekes cyane, ariko bakaba batemerewe kuyarya kubera ko ababyibushye. Niyo mpamvu natekereje gushinga company ibikora ariko igakoresha stevia powder ikora mu mwanya w'isukari ku buryo bitazajya bibabyibushye. Ikibazo nyamukuru numva ndi gukemura nuko hari abantu baba bafite needs cyangwa se bakenera kurya ibintu bikozwe mu mafarini, ariko ntibabe babyemerewe kubera babagiraho ingaruka y'umubyibuho, bibatera amasukari menshi mu maraso no mu mubiri. Rero abaganga bakabibabuza. Icyo nicyo kibazo naje gukemura, ku buryo bazajya babirya ntibigire izindi ngaruka bibatera kandi bagasatisfiza needs zabo. Ikintu numva nifuza cyane kuzageraho nuko nzabasha gufata iyi kampani yanjye n'ibyo ikora nkagenda nyishyira muri buri karere kagize igihugu cyacu cy'u Rwanda, ku buryo buri muturage ahari wese wifuza iyo product ikoranye stevia powder ariko idafite nyine isukari, ku buryo azajya abasha kuyibona bimworoheye.
My name is Doreen Mutaganzwa, and I'm the CEO of Cafe Dre. We sell coffee in environmentally friendly containers. As a coffee person who also has a background in conservation, I wanted to do something that decreases the carbon footprint of the coffee industry in general. In 2 years, I want to have five shops, one in each Rwandan province.
From Pax Ventures, and we are an outdoor company. Well, as an outdoor enthusiast who also has a background in team building and experiential learning, I realized how much outdoors actually help people in different ways, in all aspects of life. So it could be at work, it could be in your day life, it could be in anything you're doing. So using the outdoors, we're helping people face their fears, challenge themselves, but as well have fun. Once people actually learn to face their fears, they achieve much. And apart from that, as a company, we are creating jobs. We are hoping to actually reach as many people as possible and help them be more productive. So we are hoping that we could reach as many people and then create a productive economy.
Welcome back again. We are now joined by the Managing Director of Impact Hub, Mafer Betancourt. Mafer, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So thank you for joining us this afternoon. We know Impact Hub has been here for a few years now in Kigali. Can you tell us a little bit more about the origin of Impact Hub coming into Kigali? Because we know you're in different cities within Africa, actually on different continents as well. Can you tell us the origin of Impact Hub in Kigali?
Yeah, sure. So Impact Hub is an innovation hub that has been here since 2015. And it was really set up as one of the first spaces to really promote innovation, social innovation, and to promote collaboration between players. So it was really this space that would bring together the community, that would create collaboration opportunities, that would engage with multiple stakeholders. It is part of a larger network, so we're in over 100 cities.
Yes.
And just recently, has been a much stronger presence in Africa, which is very nice. It has allowed for us to also coordinate more regional initiatives with the network.
Oh, great. How many cities in Africa would you say you're active in?
So in Africa at the moment, I think it's about 8, in 8 cities, and some that are starting to take shape as well.
All right. So now bringing you back to Kigali, being one of the cities that had the first Impact Hub in Africa, how would you describe the startup scene and how your interventions have really brought in value in the ecosystem?
So I think it's been really rapidly developing. I've been here for 3 years, and in those 3 years I've seen like a rapid change, a lot of new players in the ecosystem.
All right.
Our interventions have focused primarily around community events.
Okay.
So really trying to build communities around social entrepreneurship, environmental sustainability, and arts and culture. So really a diversity of areas.
Okay.
Then the co-working space that was there since 2015. And the third area, which has evolved a lot and also served different needs as the ecosystem changes, has been more the innovation programs.
Okay.
So the innovation programs are mostly, in our case, to support very early stage entrepreneurs and young innovators.
Okay.
And these programs are really from design thinking trainings to more curated and tailored programs such as boot camps, innovation challenges, pitch competitions. We set up, together with GIZ, an innovation lab at the Kigali refugee camp.
Yes.
So a very wide different type of initiatives curated together with partners.
Yes.
So we worked with UNDP, development agencies such as GIZ, universities, we've worked with AIMS, with government stakeholders, so really trying to work with different players and putting together innovation programs in different topics.
Exactly. Thank you. Now, looking at the startups that you're working with within these different programs, what would you say is their biggest challenge? Really, from the view of Impact Hub, what's the really biggest challenge that they face, and what are the opportunities you see coming up with the ecosystem growing with different players coming in?
So I think some of the main challenges are around access to finance. So startups being able to get finance at this very early stage, but also for growing. In terms of their own readiness, I think there's also a gap in terms of being investment ready. So having the actual capacities to attract and to capture this investment.
Okay.
And having a validated and strong business model in place.
All right.
Another challenge maybe is more in terms of accessing support. So I think while there's a lot of support right now and new players, there's perhaps still a little bit of a lack of coordination, and I think that's part of the process. It's an ecosystem that is taking shape.
Yes.
But yes, in terms of like maybe having more targeted coordination between the different players. And I also think it's very concentrated still in Kigali.
Okay.
So that
So now moving into the other cities.
Yeah, and the scalability of the startup. So like if you want to scale outside of Kigali and then outside of Rwanda, I think there are also challenges in that sense.
Yes.
But in terms of opportunities, I think there are also a lot of great opportunities.
Okay.
I think Rwanda is really becoming a center. It's raising its profile with government-led and government-supported initiatives to both have great international forums here for attracting investment as well. You have, as I said before, a lot of new ecosystem players. In the past 3 years, there have been so many new support organizations which are doing great work. And there are more coming. I think there's also much more awareness between the support organizations that there is a need to collaborate more and to coordinate the interventions that you're doing to ultimately be able to support an entrepreneur from that very early stage all the way until it scales. And yes, I think the government willingness, I think there's a lot of willingness to support. Just recently we've been part of the process of Startup Act, I think all of the ecosystem players, and it's a great initiative that will ultimately help create policies that are more supportive of startups and social entrepreneurs.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Investment kept coming back, and I might put you on the spot here to say, okay, since investment is and access to finance is kind of coming up from the different hubs that we are talking to today, how do you see the future of investment into startups specifically unfolding in the next, let's say, few years within the programs you're running?
I think definitely in a positive direction. I think there are government efforts to really consolidate actions to attract investors. I think one of the reasons of why at the beginning maybe some investors are less comfortable in investing is maybe because you don't know many of success stories. And in the past 1-2 years, we've seen startups that have really made it out there and have attracted a lot of investment. And I think that starts creating confidence.
Great.
But yeah, I think also with the government initiatives, the type of forums that we're attracting, like the Africa Tech Summit, all the other big conferences and that are really making people see oh, Rwanda is an interesting place. Well, what's happening? Can it be a starting point? Can it be an entry point to the continent?
Yes.
And so yeah, I think it's going in a positive direction. And in our specific case, we've also been working around a more targeted initiative to attract specifically European investors. And this was an initiative that was piloted already in Ghana. So we're thinking of, by an impact hub in Ghana, so we're thinking of how to replicate it in the different countries in Africa. And I think being part of this network would maybe make the initiative more attractive. They had a great success in Ghana. They were able to really bring a lot of interesting investors and that were for the first time investing in Africa. So for them, I think it's also about training the investor and being there is this happening, things are happening here, there are great opportunities, and showing that.
We look forward to have that program here. So to close out, what would be your words of encouragement for young innovators looking to join programs like Impact Hubs?
I would say join us and be part of this social change. For those that are already working, keep doing the amazing work that you're doing. I think that to solve and address social challenges and to achieve sustainable development, we really need a lot of young people, the collective effort of young innovators who are ready to think creatively and to address present challenges in innovative ways. I think it's a hard journey. And as much as people repeat it, I think it's true. I think it's a process of really trying, testing, adapting, refining your innovation, testing it again, sometimes failing, starting all over again. But don't give up. Keep doing this. And don't work alone. I think collaborate, work with others. I think Kigali is a small city. Rwanda is a small country. Take advantage of that. Work with others. Our experience has been really positive in bringing multiple stakeholders, seeing how many people are really willing to give their time, their energy, because they believe in social change. They believe in social impact. So take advantage of that and work together with others. Don't work alone.
Thank you very much, my friend. We are now going to visit the innovators that are part of the Impact Hub programs.
My name is Ardushimi Ines Rachel, and I'm the research analyst at AFSIA Solar, the African Solar Industry Association. We do information in the solar industry. We do provide information for all those companies. So because of the potential of the African continent within the solar industry, we judge this right to be the ones to provide all that information that is needed by all those players doing different activities within the solar industry, basically here in Africa. We achieve it every day when a house is electrified, so we'll keep doing so until Africa is electrified, until Rwanda is electrified, so that's our biggest achievement.
Yeah, my name is Sarah Kaberuka Uwera. I'm the manager of Rwanda Build program. So today I'm going to talk about one of our products, which is EventsPush. EventsPush is the platform where you can find all the events and happenings and what's going on in Kigali. It used to be hard, especially for new people coming in the country, to know what's going on, because most people used to know the events or the gatherings due to their friends, like they share via the WhatsApp groups. The main thing that is solving is helping people to get to know what's going on. As now Rwanda is getting more tourists and new people coming in the city, we think it's going to be easy for them to know different programs, different shows. So we think it's a solution to those people. In the near future, we are hoping to get many people using the platform so that we can add more features. Like now, we are planning to add the ticketing feature where people will be able to buy tickets online. They will be able to buy tickets on the site directly, and it is going to be easy for them, and also they will not waste time finding out where to get the tickets.
My name is Ruhumuriz Abdul, and I'm a software developer at Rwanda Build program, and I'm here today to talk about Hello Kigali, which is a city discovery app for tourists. Let's say you are a tourist or an expert who is coming abroad and you want to see like the best restaurant in Kigali. Hello Kigali can help you find that, and Hello Kigali provides an ability to do some ratings, and also Hello Kigali gives you an ability to see like the best of items in Kigali. Let's say if you want to check like the best place in Kigali with the best burger ever, you can find that on Hello Kigali. And also, if you use Hello Kigali to check in at some location, let's say you just arrived at Ikawa Cafe, you can check in that you have arrived at Ikawa Cafe, and from there you will be gaining some rewards, like some sort of loyalty system. And we want to give a reward to like someone who has more check-ins. Let's say if if you are the one with the most check-ins at La Gardienne, we can give you like free sambusas, some stuff like that. Back in 2017, most places, most coffee shops didn't have like Wi-Fi. Even if you had them, there were no way to know that place has Wi-Fi. So Hello Kigali helps you to find like restaurant with Wi-Fi, and we're targeting also the experts who doesn't know a lot on Kigali. In the near future, I think we want to integrate the payment system in Hello Kigali so that Hello Kigali can be part of the ecosystem we are building at Rwanda Build, and also we are planning on bringing up like a menu. A user will be able to see like a menu of a restaurant of his choice, so he can see the items that restaurant is selling. Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. We are now joined by the Managing Director of Kigali Innovation City, Tessie Rusagara. Tessie?
Hi, Chusa. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome to the Startup Exhibition.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Likewise. So the Kigali Innovation City. we're really at a vantage point here where you really have a view of the city. And tell us, what does the Kigali Innovation City do? Who are you? And what have you done since your creation?
Thank you, Chusa. So KIC is a physical technology park that we're building in the special economic zone.
All right.
So it is, we have 4 anchor universities, 2 of which are already located there, which is Carnegie Mellon University, Africa, as well as the Africa Leadership University.
Yes.
In addition to those 2, we will have the African Institute of Mathematical Science, AIMS, which is for short, as well as the University of Rwanda's Center for Biomedical Engineering.
All right.
So to complement the universities and the talent pool that we will have there, we're going to add, of course, make it a mixed-use development with retail, housing, so that we can have a conducive physical space for all the innovators and the companies and startups to operate here in Rwanda. Beyond the physical real estate, we work very closely with the Ministry of ICT and Innovation and the Rwanda Development Board to strengthen the ecosystem for startups, for innovation here in Rwanda. I'm happy to share more, but in a nutshell, that's what we do. One is the physical space, and then the second is the innovation ecosystem.
Innovation ecosystem.
Yes.
Exactly. I think this is also why we're here. We're talking a lot about the ecosystem that the startups are growing in, and how they can navigate the different programs by the partners that we had today, showcasing how startups can navigate that environment.
Yeah.
From your standpoint, I'd say on the government of Rwanda's side, so on top of the universities, we've heard worries that there's not a lot of investments going directly into these innovations or these startups, or that Kigali maybe has, it's not really that scalable as a market. What would you say to that? What would be, what is your sentiment with regards to how the ecosystem is faring right now for startups?
So maybe the first thing I'll do is describe what we call the ecosystem, how we refer to it, and what we mean by strengthening.
Yes, sure.
So there's a couple of actors. So the universities, like you mentioned, then there's government, then there's the entrepreneurs, the startups, the corporates, and then finally the investors, the people who are putting capital.
Yes.
So by strengthening it, we need to be able to make sure that we have each of those players in the ecosystem, and then we also have to have them working together, because sometimes you find that even when they exist, they operate in silos, and there's a need to connect them. And when you do that, you start to solve many of the challenges that you're talking about. So one of the big initiatives that we have ongoing actually right now is the Startup Act reform.
All right.
We're working on it. It's being spearheaded by the ministry as well as KIC and the ICT Chamber, so that we look at the policy and regulatory environment that we have for startups here, so that we can make sure it's also evolving with how we see the landscape for startups evolving. So what that does is it also starts to look at what are some of the challenges that they face from a policy and regulatory environment.
Yes.
Once you're able to unlock that, it also unlocks different opportunities for them. So that's one. We're also looking at funding as well, making sure that both there's local funding available, and different types of funding. So we're working with different partners to really understand how we can start to build the angel investing landscape. That requires looking at, again, the Startup Act will look at the policy and regulatory reforms, but then there's still work to be done to identify who are angels, how do you train them, and working with different partners. And so that also continues to look at then like seed VC, late stage VC, also venture debt. So those are some of the initiatives that we're working on, so that we can start to address the challenges that we see. The last one you talked about is scaling.
Yes.
So the definition of a startup is high growth. There are very few startups that scale and get high growth in one market, whether it's the US, whether it's even in the very mature markets. So, what's important is the market size. It's also important to have the right product. It's important to have the right team. A lot of what we're building is to make sure, you know, that there's an environment for you to build your product here, for you to be able to get build your team, for instance, through access in the different universities and so on, but also by having the different hubs like Westerville and 250 and others who help people strengthen the product and also strengthen their team. Then when it comes to then prove your product here, and then start to think about how do you scale outside. And there is, again requires different actors. So for instance, you need to be able, usually even you need the funding. You need the, right now there's some initiatives like through RDB, there's an export growth fund that some technology companies are starting to be admitted to, and they can get some assistance to think about which markets will we go to, can we grow how do we, some assistance with feasibility studies and so on. How do you create more of those opportunities? So I think it will come. We're still we're still a young market, but I think what's important is that we're identifying what is needed in collaboration with the different startups and some of the hubs, and then we're trying to make sure that we're investing in all these critical, I guess it's actually infrastructure that you need for them to scale.
Exactly. Okay, nice. So you did mention about the Startup Act, and we know it was recently concluded in terms of people putting in their views. Would you say you've had time to, let's say, look over it, and any surprises in terms of what challenges startups are facing? Is it or are these things that you feel are being worked on already, even though they haven't, as you said, reached a satisfactory level, for instance?
It's a bit of both. So we have, I think what we wanted to do with the Startup Act was be a lot more comprehensive. So there's all these what we would call building blocks that we think are very critical for the startups to be successful, and that you need to look at from a policy and regulatory environment. So some we've already discussed, like financing, talent, and so on. What we have done with this, particularly with this process, together with different partners like Make IT, I4 Policy, who's leading the work, and others, was to make sure that it was very inclusive. So having the ecosystem be a part of it. So they had different events, like you mentioned, there was the website where they were collecting ideas. And what it brought to light was, well, sometimes you might have an understanding of, at a very high level, what some of the issues are. It's always great to hear the experiences of people who are on the ground building their companies day to day, and they can point out to very specific issues that they face. And so in some cases it's been surprises or something maybe you hadn't thought about. In other cases it's been getting solutions from them on how you can solve what's already existing. So it's a bit of both. I think what's important is that there's really been a lot of input and involvement from the ecosystem. So that as we get into now putting it all together and refining, it will reflect the needs and the challenges on the ground.
All right. Okay, so to close out, a young entrepreneur right now wants to start, has an innovative idea, wants to put it into motion, to start it as a company. Having that, I would say, real overview of all the ecosystem actors, how would you tell them to navigate this space? Where would you tell them to start? Yes.
It's a very good question. So for young entrepreneurs who are just starting out, I would say that the first place should actually be the hubs, because so 250, Westerville, and others who are on the market, because they give you the technical support that you might need to build your business. They also give community, which is also very important. in terms of helping you, whether it's to bounce ideas, whether it's as you think about building a team, or even just sharing lessons that have been learned. It's quite important. So I think that's that. And then they also have events which allow you to be able to access new people, new networks, and so on, which is quite important. So I would definitely recommend, checking out many of the hubs that we have. We're starting to see a lot more specialization, some focused on tourism, on fintech, which is great, so that if people have very specific ideas, they can actually start to apply to those. And then lastly, we've been working on actually a tool that will provide information of all the hubs, so that you can have a digital way to actually learn about them, to see what they offer, to read up on them, so that there's actually more information available at the hands of the young innovators.
Yes.
Yeah. So watch out for the launch of that tool. It's still under development, but we will definitely keep you posted.
How soon? If do you have a timeline?
So we have the I'd say beta version that's out. So in the next couple of months, we should be ready to launch. We've been testing it out as well to make sure with the market and our customers to get feedback.
All right.
So it should be out in the next quarter or so. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Tessie.
Thank you.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Charles. Now coming back to the startups in your do you call it an incubator, accelerator?
Yeah, more as a hub, tech hub, call it tech hub.
Yes. What are, considering now the environment around COVID, there's definitely challenges that everybody has met in terms of businesses, being shut down or things moving slower and restrictions. But it could also be opportunities. Can you tell us what has been the experience within your programs in terms of the challenges that the startups have met during this time?
Thank you very much. I think we had to change the first 3 weeks for the total lockdown. It was really challenging, but we loved it in one way. We had a 10 startup company, but some of these startup company actually they benefited more. So when we tell them what is the effect of COVID-19, it's positive. It's not negative, especially the e-commerce platforms. These people actually they made money, and we see they are growing. Actually for them, when you talk to them, COVID is a great deal because it's an investment for them. Those days when people are at home, there's no way how you move out. These companies have made a great impact. But for the program itself, it was really challenging to support these people while you're at home. Remember, our work the main work is to make sure that we deploy. That means going meet the clients wherever they are, and that's one of the important components that we do. We don't want to build your solution when you are at your home. No one knows it. You're really solving your own problem. But how do you solve people's problem? Is go talk to them, get the feedback, change what you've changed, deploy again, and then get the feedback, and then you finalize. Then you have the final MVP at the end of the day. So for the program, we had to think of how do we support them, but now we changed and focused on product development. Looking into how you work on your tech side, looking into if it's a website, what do you need to do at this time, and that's what we really focused on as an incubation program. But again, on their side, also it was more of looking at the team, perfecting on all departments, because we have different departments. The good chance by the time we came into this total lockdown, we had already first sent them to the clients. So they had at least the first and the second feedback from their clients. So the third one, they had already also connected in one way or the other, especially those who are working with the government institutions, with the private organizations. So it was really a bit easier. If it came when we have just started, like 2 to 3 days, it will be another story as of now. But we try to survive in that way.
Thank you. For now, thinking of the young innovators who are still coming up from universities, like you said, or from different parts of Rwanda, what words of encouragement would you give them? What would you tell them?
Yeah, thank you very much. We realize that if you look into our life and how we believe in these innovations, we changed our strategy. Now we go to academia. We look at, I'm talking of the university. We have the MOU with the University of Rwanda, RP we just signed recently. Why? Because we believe from our experience, the time you have been in this space, you have seen many innovators. They are not coming from anywhere else. They are coming from those two institutions. Because when I look into our database, and to these innovators, normally when I get a chance of meeting them, there are few things to be done. Look where you are. When you look at how Facebook came into existence, it wasn't rocket science. Just look into the problem that you have. It can be in your home. It's small as your mama or your dad or your brother or your sister. But how do you make some research about it? If you're at school, then you have a golden chance that because you have a lot of time that you can do amazing work. So one of the things is look into the problem that is really near you, and then look into ways how you're going to turn into that problem, in two ways how you can get money. I don't want to use this technical word, monetize it. It might be confusing, but how do you get money out of that problem? As simple as that. And at the end of the day, look into the opportunities. We are lucky that we are born in Rwanda because I try to talk to different people from managers of different hubs in Africa, in East Africa, and you look at the way the government is supporting and you compare to ours here, we have a lot of opportunities that young people, when you're at school, you might not know. So try to move from school and see what is happening outside there. I guess when I was at school, Patrick, this is how I came to know you for the fact, right? So how do you be at school, but know how you're solving the problem around you, but again, look outside the school. And then you see 250, you see Caleb, you see Westerville, you see all Siegel family foundation. You see a lot of opportunity around, and then know how you tap into, and then find a mentor who can guide you in that. And then you'll be a billionaire at the end of the day.
Yes. Thank you very much, Charles.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
We will now be going to meet the innovators at 250 Startups in Telecom House. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Arnold Vigirimana, and I'm the CEO and founder of Egerton. So Egerton is an online platform that helps young children to study easily or to help them understand what they are studying and tell them stories, cultural related stories, into turning them into animations. First motivation was to help the parents because parents are worried. Many times children watch international cartoons which doesn't help them to study or to know like history of the country. So I want to help them to know the story of the country using animation in an innovative way, and also to help the parents to not worry anymore and enjoy the cartoons. First problem I'm solving is to help the teachers in classroom because children sometimes get distracted. We can help them by animating some content related to curriculum. The second problem is to solve the way that we are telling stories. So we want to innovate the way we are telling stories by using animations and to create cultural related animations so that children can grow up knowing the history in a way that they are enjoying. And we want also to be able to tell stories, our country related stories, and also to help the young generation to start using ICT or know how to use computers and also tablets in an easy way and watching their cartoons they are enjoying and also studying.
My name is Cliff Richard. I'm the founder of Twist, and we're a NetTech company equipping primary school students with age-appropriate and culturally relevant stories. My love for reading and the limited proficiency levels in reading among primary school students in Rwanda. So growing up, I had the privilege of having parents who would encourage me to read, but unfortunately that's not the case for a lot of people here in Rwanda. So we started Twist to be able to come alongside these children to provide them with age-appropriate and culturally relevant stories, and in the process empower them to fulfill their true potential. Right now, the price of books is really high So a lot of kids do not access them, and the distribution is really hectic. So coming in with a digital solution, providing those content helps both to reduce the price and also in terms of scaling. So we're providing kids with the same content that they would have on a radically smaller price, and we're equipping them to be able to fulfill their true potential. And in fact, in Rwanda, 76% of third graders do not achieve minimum proficiency levels in reading, and we want that to change. We want to see every child fulfilling their true potential. We want every one of them getting to the best they can, and we're doing our part by empowering them one story at a time. And globally, if all students in primary school were able to achieve proficiency levels in reading and counting, the world poverty will be reduced by 12%, and we want to play our part in that very historic scenario.
My name is Joseph. I'm a CEO and founder of Solvit Africa. Solvit Africa is a provider for businesses, outsourcing training, and some of the digital tools for education. I started Solvit Africa because I want to provide opportunity to students and schools, such as rural areas doesn't have internet. But in terms of internship, I want to provide experience to the students and opportunity to access the real hands-on skills, opportunity of changing their skills life at school. Then coming from education ecosystems to an experience that needed outside of the market. In terms of outsourcing, we are outsourcing the real people that we trained. Means if we train people, we even sell them, place them on the market. So it gives them opportunity to get jobs without such as experience requirements. In the near future, we want to see the companies trusting graduates with jobs, and in terms of internships, we want to see all the companies able to take students from high school, be able to access their working systems and getting to work on their internships in terms of getting provided with the tools access.
My name is Christian Rangwa. I'm the founder of Opina Limited. We are professional farmers, and at the same time we have a web platform where we are linking farmland with professional farmers. I have background in agriculture and business studies. Just to live my passion, I entered in agribusiness where I found many problems, and I decided to turn those problems into opportunities. By 2024, we are working so that we may have under management of Opina 1,000 hectares, and then we look the way to go out of Rwanda. We are targeting Africa because we have a motto saying that feed the continent.
My name is Mukawagisa Fiona, and my colleague is Mutan Allen, and we're both co-founders of Iwawe. Iwawe Group is a digital real estate company that provides solutions to all real estate problems. So one day I was going to the bank to get a mortgage. Then when we went there, we found out that it's really a long process to get a mortgage. So we thought of a way like how to make things easier and for other people who are like trying to get mortgages. So that's how we came up with the idea of Iwawe Group, and along the way we came up like with other solutions about other real estate problems.
As other markets are trying to embrace the technology era, we are trying to bridge the gap between real estate and the digital era. That's why we came up with products that would provide solutions in the digital real estate market, whereby tenants could be able to access their landlords easily, investments and housing finance made easy. Yeah, what we hope to achieve in the near future is by having housing finance made easy, like access to housing finance made easy through the Iwawe platform. Also having tenancy and property management communication made easy. Basically, real estate solutions digitally accessed.
My name is Christian Rutaisire. I am a co-founder at Originius Panda,
Genius Panda is an e-learning platform that provides students with digital content that are curriculum-based, and also we provide experience of of science laboratories into our platform. Me and my colleagues were part of the educational system here in Rwanda, and part of the problem was we did not have enough science experiments in our learning, and the problem is also for everybody in this educational system, where 78% of schools do not have science laboratories. So we founded Genius Panda to give a solution to that problem. We want to see Genius Panda reach to every school here in Rwanda, and also every student leveraging on the content that we have to better their academic performance and also their career in the future.
Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in today for the 2020 Kigali Startup Exhibition. As you know, we are running this virtually, so the conversation is happening online on all our social media platforms. The hashtag is KGL Startup 2020. We are really welcoming you to keep the conversation going. We want to really thank all the ecosystem actors who came today, who were participating in the exhibition, and especially the startup innovators who are really creating amazing products and amazing innovation and services. Thank you, everyone. See you next year. Stay safe and stay innovative.